Hi, everybody. If you have not been to our show before, we are a mother-daughter duo that talks about environmental and social justice issues through a generational lens. Because I am a youth who has only been doing activism for a few years, and my mom is also a youth but has been doing activism much longer than I have. And so we talk about how a lot of the issues we're dealing with are the same, different, and ways that you can also get involved. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, environmental stuff is depressing, hold on, because our episodes are fun, hopeful, realistic, but you're gonna get jazzed up at the end. That's a promise.
See, she does such a much better job than I do, except she forgot to introduce herself.
Oh, hi, I'm Annika Van Rossum. Just get into it, man. I get into the first part and then the rest is just like,
all right, well, take care of it, man.
Hi, I'm your one co-host, Annika Van Rossum, joined by my mother,
Maya Van Rossum,
your other co-host, and we are Green Jeans. So, Mom, do you have a fact check for us this week?
Well, I'm going a little bit back and forth. I was going to look up the definition of organics, for people who want to eat more healthfully, and talk about organic food labeling because it kind of goes well with today's show. But I decided I was not prepared to do the best job ever because, as with all things when it comes to labeling, there's so much nuance that you have to be very mindful of. That when something's labeled organic, it depends on who's doing the labeling and then what kind of standards do they set, and whether we're talking about our US government, which allows a lot of things to get through on all kinds of, under all kinds of labels, whether you're talking about organics or clean water, or whether you're talking about a third party who's a little bit of a better independent arbiter. So I decided that there was too much nuance and detail for me to really get into that in a fact check. So I'm not going to do a fact check about that, but instead I found this really interesting list, which, when you're talking about fruits and vegetables, what are the fruits and vegetables you have to be more mindful of in terms of where you get them from, and paying particular attention to that labeling when it comes to organics. And so here is what the Environmental Working Group in a report has identified as the dirty dozen. So in other words, those vegetables where you want to be really careful in terms of who are you buying it from and whether or not you're paying attention to that kind of organic labeling. And so the dirty dozen, number one is strawberries. And I always knew it was high. I didn't know it was number one. Number two is spinach. Number three is nectarines. Number four is apples. Number five is grapes. Number six is peaches. Number seven is cherries. Number eight is pears. Number nine is tomatoes. Number 10 is celery. Number 11 is potatoes. And number 12 is sweet bell peppers. I knew about strawberries. I knew about apples. I knew about celery because when I eat celery that's not made or that is not organic, actually my whole mouth itches. So I knew that, and I knew about grapes, but I was kind of surprised about some of the others.
Those are like the main fruits and vegetables as I eat. Because if you listen to our vegetarian episode, you know that I'm a notoriously picky eater. So great. I do pay attention, but also living on that poor law school student budget. Got to pinch a penny here and there.
Yeah. Remember when you had that horrifying woman that was a part of your life? And she would force you to eat those grapes. Right? I'm sure those grapes were not organic. So that was probably a bad memory. You probably didn't want to eat those grapes for a reason.
Yeah, probably bad.
But today's episode is going to be really exciting because it's a different way of talking about, well, we're not going to be talking about organics, right? We're going to be talking about glyphosate-free honey.
Yeah. So our guest is Mary Pat Tomei, who is about to join us. And I think, we'll let Mary Pat do her intro because we never like to give away everyone's stuff because people are so great about introducing themselves.
They do much better job. I always like to introduce myself when I give a talk because one, you make sure you get in all the right stuff. And two, I really hate it often when people introduce me, they kind of give away like my best line.
Thunder.
It's just like, are you kidding me? You heard me do the talk. Don't give my talk for me.
Mhm.
Anyway, so is Mary Pat with us?
Yep.
Hey, Mary Pat Tomei, how you doing?
Hey, Maya, how are you? Hi, Annika.
Hi, MP. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's so nice to see both of you.
It's nice to see you too.
As is our practice, we decided we would let you introduce yourself so that you do it exactly the way you want to be introduced for today's show. I know it's a rough job, but you know, somebody's got to do it. That's you.
It's been so long since I've had to introduce myself to anyone, anywhere. Other than to the 4 people that I talk to on a regular basis. So I don't know who I am, Maya. Tell me who I am. Why did you invite me on your show?
So Mary Pat is an environmental hero. She used to work for a legislator who is a very progressive legislator, but I am sure much more progressive because Mary Pat was there behind the scenes, pushing all the time. So she worked the system as a staffer at the legislature to really make a powerful difference in people's lives. But since that time, since she retired, she has started a new business with her husband, which is what we're actually here to talk about. So you could talk about your political life a little bit, but maybe we should talk a little bit about your new business because it's really fun stuff.
Well, interestingly, there is a nexus between my new business and my old life in the legislature, because how my company, if you want to call it that, I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. Like I am still not quite comfortable with that role. But when I was in the legislature and I was doing a lot of work on GMO labeling, we had a bill to require labeling in Pennsylvania, and I did a lot of research on all sorts of things, but primarily glyphosate, because that is the ingredient that GMO seeds allow to be doused everywhere, all over the place, because they are Roundup ready, as they said in the industry. So that was what first alerted me to the glyphosate. And then right around that time, as the director of outreach for my boss, I would often give my advocates, I believe I've given it to you, like my little jar of cream that I would make, because I have a medicinal herb garden in the back, and I would, grow my own calendula and make my own creams. And I would use all that, of course, as therapy from my crazy job. So I would just come home and work in my garden and dream and work and come to my office and dream of what else can I do but this? It's so crazy. So I would, all the advocates that were helping me pass different bills were, doing it for free, doing it because they cared about this issue. They had love in their heart. They wanted to make the world better. And I was getting paid to do all that work. And so I was just so grateful for all of their work. So I just wanted to give everyone a gift. And I called my cream Queen of Prussia Royal Balm for Tireless Servants.
Which is the best stuff. It was always the best gift. Although I don't know if I ever fessed up. Often Dave would steal my jar of cream. And I would be using it and it would be gone. And then I would look over and it would be over on his side of the bed because he was inevitably using it for one thing or another, which was really irritating. He as his side pool hustle.
Right.
His feet would get very dry and literally crack open, and your cream is what would heal him.
Yeah, it has a lot of calendula and chamomile, which is all good for that. But so that was just like a fun way for me to escape the craziness of my regular job. And I would just dream about what would it be like to have a business? What would it be like to own a company? What could I name my company? That would be so fun. And so I came up with fun names for things and never really understanding what's involved in a business, having no idea what's involved in a business, but it was fun to name them and fun to think of the products that I would sell. And so around 2017 or so, it was around 2016. That's right. It was because we were passing medical marijuana, and I suddenly realized I had a lot of advocates to give this this thing to, and me and Johnny would actually hand print the labels before we, anything. But so for my birthday, because he was probably dreading the idea of
a little bit of a side note, everybody from Pennsylvania who's listening, did you hear what she just said? One of the reasons why in Pennsylvania you have the opportunity for medical marijuana is thanks to Mary Pat Tomei. And it has also, that effort here in Pennsylvania has served as an inspiration for other states. So if you're not from Pennsylvania, you may also have to give Mary Pat credit for what's happening in your state. Just want to, you just glossed over that. So I just want to give credit where credit is due.
We're here to talk about honey, but that's good. That's fine. Because I love this whole podcast. I love the idea that this is an intergenerational podcast about activism, because as I've told Annika and you, I'm sure many times, I have so many views on this, on activism and, how it's going and what we could do better. But nonetheless, back to my I guess it's called a founder's story. For my birthday that year, my husband works is a creative director in the ad industry. And for my birthday that one year in 2016, as we were anticipating the 40 labels we were going to have to hand print for the signing of the bill, my husband, as a birthday gift, gave me a graphic designer to help me make the label. So I came up with all the name and the design, and so we just started printing. It became Honey the Moon Farms. I could go into that's another whole long rabbit hole.
Wait a second. Wait, we skipped from cream to honey. I think
Honey the Moon Farms was the name of my cream business too. It's just because if you look at the name is
right.
Honey, comma the moon. It's not really about honey.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
you're
I actually
tricky.
missed that. I got the Queen of Prussia, and I always just assumed that the honey over the moon was
Fake friend.
Oh man, I am not a fake friend. Mary Pat and I are really good friends, man.
If I had a really good marketing team behind me, you all would know the origin of Honey the Moon, because Honey the Moon, it's really about, like, we were just trying to make sanity out of all the crazy stuff that was happening. And it's really about just, enjoying the important things like honey, the moon. Isn't it beautiful? Just noticing the little things every day to make things less, terrible and more wonderful, I guess. So we named it, we got a jar, and then right around the same time, my husband was working with for a company that had an office in Greece. And while he was there, he met a Greek beekeeper, and he brought home a jar of Greek fir honey. And of course, the Greek beekeeper used to tell Johnny all the time, "Oh, American honey, it stinks, so full of sugar," and we were like, "We don't feed our bees sugar, no, we don't feed during production." And he was boasting about his honey. We didn't quite believe him, because there's a lot of, male braggadocio over in Greece. And
You don't say.
So he brought it home, and it really was the best honey that I had ever tasted. It wasn't even like honey. It was like caramel or vanilla caramel. It was the most amazing honey. So right around that time, after he convinced us that it was wonderful, he kept trying to tell my husband that we should import his honey. And I'm like, we don't know anything about business, number one. Number two, importing, the food industry is just so difficult and fraught. And it was very difficult at first. We really had no intentions of becoming importers of Greek honey. But once we started, I don't know what I would do without it, a half of a jar of that a night, practically. It's my dessert. It's what I use. It's the most delicious honey. We now have 5 different kinds. We have oak, pine, fir, heather, and chestnut, and they're all, as you know, so wonderful. And but we're still sort of, we're still moving along rather slowly. We haven't really, exploded, because it requires we don't have the millions of dollars that, say, Manuka put behind their marketing campaigns to educate the consumer to understand, why would you spend $20 on a jar of honey? there's lots of reasons which we can go into. And so I'm sure you guys have lots of really good questions for me.
Yes, we do. But first, I do want to say two things proving how delish Honey the Moon honey is. One, every year I get every member of my staff a present for their birthday. And so what we do, and actually I have to do this year's order, Mary Pat, is my husband and I, we buy Honey the Moon honey and we give it to, you know, on their birthday. Every member of the staff gets this precious jar of honey and everybody raves about it. And they're just like, when I started doing that, best gift ever. So that's number one. It's a great, great gift. Great gift. And it's really special. And you're going to learn more and more about why it's special. But the other thing is when Mary Pat was first starting the business with John, her husband, we were over there visiting for dinner, just myself and my son. I don't think Dave could make it. Monica, you were off at school. And Mary Pat offered Vim some ice cream. Now, Vim always likes chocolate ice cream. Mary Pat had vanilla ice cream and then said, but put this honey on it. And she put some honey on it. And I thought, oh my God, because, you know, talk about Annika being a picky eater, Vim. Oh, so I was just waiting to like have Mary Pat's feelings hurt because Vim was not going to eat this vanilla ice cream with honey. And I brought it into him and we went back into the kitchen to eat. And I came into the room and Vim, like all his ice cream was gone and he wanted more. And he was like, this is the best dessert I've ever had, right? He was over the moon about Honey the Moon. And you wonderfully gave us a jar that night that we brought home. And every night, Vim was eating ice cream with honey. And so we quickly had to order some honey. And we got, at that point, you only had 3 flavors and we got some of each flavor and Vim would taste test it and have a wonderful time. And so now we just always have the honey because it's so delicious.
Well, I was always doing every night for several months in a row. I was doing vanilla ice cream with crumbled almonds and some honey drizzled oak or fir was my favorite for a long time, and chestnut then became my favorite. But then, you know, and I just, because I was always active, I didn't worry about any kind of weight issues. But all of a sudden, I went to the doctor and I had like a cholesterol issue. Like, how did that happen? I eat all organic food. I eat such healthy food all the time. And but you should not eat ice cream every night for dessert. So now I just eat honey every night for dessert. That is my dessert. Sometimes just honey and chopped almonds. It's just so delicious. So yeah, it's amazing.
I was gonna say, honey, in preparation for the show, I did some health research, and one of the studies, there's multiple, but I'll just pick one for right now. It said one observational study included over 4,500 people over age 40 associated a moderate keyword moderate honey intake with a lower risk of high blood pressure among women.
Wow, that's really good to know. I didn't know that.
I mean, that's like honey without the ice cream and moderate, but
yeah.
But you have a lot of great facts on Mary Pat, on your website. You guys have a lot of great facts and information about your honey. So we don't forget, because people are going to want to look now that I've just said that. Make sure you say the website right now.
honeythemoon.com.
And you're going to find like all kinds of cool facts. Although anybody who listens to the show knows Annika always does her research and she's going to pepper cool facts throughout.
And don't forget, in the episode description, we will have a link to MP's website that you can easily click on to go check out Honey the Moon Farms.
So now, in addition to the very delicious flavors that are better and richer than what you can find here in the United States, you've alluded to it, but what is one of the other most special elements about Honey the Moon honey?
Well, our honey has been tested for glyphosate, which glyphosate is the most used herbicide in the land, in the world. There's billions and billions, like millions. In fact, I did write down a statistic because I'm enumerate and can't remember numbers. But there are over, where did I write it down? But there are just 200, there's like this, I think there's 208 million pounds of glyphosate used annually on 289 million acres. It's literally everywhere.
Jeez.
It's hard to escape. That's why it's really hard. That's why I think it's easier for people like us. Like if we had our honey tested, our own honey from our backyard bees, I bet you our honey has glyphosate in it, because you can't control who's using Roundup and who's, what farms, what fields have glyphosate. But where our Vasily, our Greek beekeeper, takes it, to these far away, very rural lands in the Mount Pindos Mountains and Mount Pelios range, and is just so far from civilization that there is no, there's no glyphosate. So we're probably lucky that we get to we do have it tested, but it's really hard to have no glyphosate. It's really hard to have organic honey. That's another thing. He really thought that we could get more money for our honey if he went through the process of becoming organic, but that's just almost difficult. Right now, the only organic honey that's coming out in the world is from Brazil. And that, of course, I'm questioning. I just don't understand how they get organic honey. I find that to be difficult, given the population, the amount of agriculture, and the amount of people that use glyphosate. And why is glyphosate so scary? I mean, it's just a very scary product in general. It was deemed safe for many years by everybody. Everyone said, EPA said it was fine. But then, and I guess it's been around for a long time too, but then I guess when they were using it pretty frequently, but then when they started making the GMO seeds, and what GMO seeds are, is that they are types of seeds like the, mostly, oats, corn, soybeans, things that are genetically modified that can withstand large amounts of glyphosate. They grow despite glyphosate. And what glyphosate actually does, and the reason that I believe initially everyone thought it was safe for humans, what glyphosate does is it inactivates a certain enzymatic pathway as a plant is developing. So it's in this pathway is called the shikimate pathway, and humans don't have a shikimate pathway that we in our bodies. However, it's only found in plants and organisms. But when you think about it, we have a lot of microorganisms in our body. In fact, we have the entire gut biome that is made up of bacteria and organisms and our biome is what creates, helps our immune system. It is our immune system. It's, everyone is talking about that a lot more now than ever before. And so what, the connections the dots that I connected were that it's killing off that bacteria in our gut, because and you will see a rise, you'll notice a rise in the, simultaneous rise in the use of glyphosate and the GMO seeds and all of this, like it's almost like an epidemic of, celiac disease and irritable bowel syndrome and, psoriasis and eczema, all these things that are that are related to, your immune system. And fatty liver disease. I've heard of, a lot of people getting fatty liver disease that don't drink. How does that happen? It's, it makes it very hard for our liver to detoxify when it's so busy clearing out all the other toxins in our body. So, and so much processed food has glyphosate. Another thing that I learned just as I was preparing to talk to you guys was that they no longer just put it on the weeds of the rows of corn and grain and beets and whatever they're growing, but they put it right before harvest. They spray it again so that the weeds and the the aisles, the rows don't mess with the equipment. So it's like it's getting one more douse. They douse it, throughout its growth period, but then right at the end too, so that product is going to have, a lot of glyphosate on it by the time it's being used. So it just, to us, we're just like Joe Rogan. I am not a scientist, but I
I don't think you want to liken yourself to Joe Rogan.
No,
You're so much smarter.
Oh my God. But I don't know that that's true. He's probably a way better businessman than I am. but I do know that it's like, we just thought of all the things we could test for with our honey, what would make the most sense to me, that I care about the most. And so we chose glyphosate because it is so prevalent and it's so everywhere. And I find it to be so damaging. And there's just study after study coming out. I won't go into all of those, but there's lots of evidence that show that. And the EU versus the United States, they have a much lower, it's called tolerance for the levels of glyphosate that's allowed in their water, that's allowed in their food residue. We, of course, think it's all fine. In fact, the EPA, the World Health Organization in 2015 said that it is a likely carcinogen. And then shortly after that, the EPA came out and said, no, we have all this new evidence that shows it's fine. So of course, industry funded studies, all about that, Maya, and regular.
Oh yeah, we've been battling glyphosate here in the Delaware River watershed for years, especially the Salem Nuclear Generating Station, PSE&G, used to aerial spray it
Oh,
to
wow.
kill plants, down in the Delaware estuary. We talked about that story at one point in a previous show. And certainly, as you said, it's ubiquitous. People use it in their yards. Often schools use it, on their paths and around their playing fields. Some don't, some ban it. Municipalities use it along their walking paths, and on the side of walking paths where people are walking their animals, walking themselves, walking with their children close to the ground. And as you say, EPA and the government says it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. But yet there is so much evidence about the health impacts. And as Annika said, when we actually did a fact check on glyphosate, she said, it's an herbicide. It's meant to kill.
Yeah.
So of course it's not safe. Sorry to steal your line, Annika.
Well, I was just laughing because my friends and I were just talking yesterday about it's funny because you mentioned Joe Rogan, because we were talking about all these things about what information, with vaccines and masks, what information are we allowing to be censored and when is it too much, blah, blah, blah. And I, of course, was like, well, we all know there's a difference between people spewing fake opinions and actual backed scientific fact. But one of the things was of course, sometimes the things we say are correct then, but then when you have more studies, later on, so way back in the day, it used to be, it's perfectly okay for pregnant women to smoke cigarettes because the science at the time suggested there was no problem with it. But then when you got 30, 40, 50 years down the road, or you saw all these issues from the children being born with, issues, or the mother's health issues and all that, I was like, oh, this is actually a problem. So yeah, I mean, my thing is too, is if it's a pesticide and herbicide, you're like, well, it's probably not carcinogenic. I don't really trust you in the now, EPA and government funded people. I'm gonna bet in 20, 30 years, it's gonna be oh, sorry guys, it's actually really bad for you.
Well, the EU, and I hope I have this written down somewhere, is they will be actually phasing it out, and by 2025 they will not allow any glyphosates to be used at all. And some of them are sooner than 2025, but as a general rule they have to be done by 2025. Studies, how studies go. It's it's the age-old story of just manufacture doubt. Get someone else to give you another study that can put doubt on that, and then it all comes down to in almost every issue we deal with, it comes down to educating the consumer, buyer beware, all that stuff. But educating the consumer and trying to help people understand why this is bad. But it's difficult to talk about food things, telling your friends they shouldn't eat anything with processed food with glyphosate. You can't really. People take offense to you telling people how to eat. It's, you can't, it has to be something that comes on their own after their kids get sick and see, oh yeah, that can happen because I wasn't paying attention, or I wasn't, educated enough to understand that we have to care about what we put in our bodies.
Well, and I have a hard time when I was reading about glyphosate too, it said one of the things besides of course I'm if they're spraying something on plants, I'm gonna bet it shouldn't go in my body. If there's something being sprayed in that massive of quantity, I'm gonna bet it's not supposed to go in my body. But I think people forget the process of honey too is the bees are making it through their own body, and another 2015 study showed the exposure of adult bees to the herbicide glyphosate at levels found in fields, quote, impairs the cognitive capacities needed for a successful return to the hive. So like if it's messing with bees when they ingest it in their bodies, like, and how they do this born with, I forget the term, but like know how to navigate back to the hive since birth, and they can't figure it out now, there's no way it's good for you once it goes through their body and then turns into honey.
There also are studies that show that it directly can kill the bees because they are an organism that, that digests, and it kills something in them that prevents, that allows them to fail to thrive is the term, after this, that was a study from 2017, I believe, that I could get for you and for you to put in your notes if somewhere. But the other thing that, as far as, so like this would be something like would be a great, there's like lots of groups that do advocate for, food safety and but the other real issue, and what comes back to us selling our honey was we were going to get it tested for glyphosate, and then I was really still kind of unsure about wanting to do this process because, like I said, can't remember, very bad with numbers, not an ideal business person, really don't like to sell things to people, but then I started understanding what was really the problem. Like we wanted to become beekeepers because we wanted to save the bees. The bee was on the cover of Time, and we thought, oh, we got to, but that's not so much really. We were with our 1 and 2 hives in the backyard. That wasn't really what we needed to. That wasn't going to get at the root cause. But one of the things that I thought, instead of saving the bee, what I've come to the conclusion, and this is a whole other topic of conversation that we could go into, and it's probably too long for this one, but the real reason that we decided to go ahead with the business was that at the time this was happening, Greece was in a terrible economic situation, terrible economic crisis, and beekeepers were having a particularly hard time selling their honey. And so we really liked Vasily. We wanted, to support him. We became friends with him because he would come over here. John had gone over there a couple times. And the real thing that we should be concerned about because of food fraud. Now, have you guys heard about food fraud and like it was on the Rotten movie?
I know the concept broadly, but it's probably good for people too that don't know.
It was called honey laundering, and there was this, back around 2000s, in the United States, there was China had exported a bunch of honey that had antibiotics in it, and they were caught, and they had to ship all of their honey back, and they just suddenly had a lot of honey that they had to get rid of. So they just started adulterating it, and it's called economically motivated adulteration because they had all this honey, they couldn't sell it, and then they started shipping it through other countries. It's called transshipping through Turkey or India or Vietnam, where which aren't largely known for exporting honey. So all of a sudden we were getting all this cheap honey on the market, and beekeepers weren't making it. It was causing the market to be artificially low, the price of the honey to be artificially low, and beekeepers weren't able to make their money back because the honey packers were getting such cheap honey. They weren't going to buy honey from American beekeepers that do it the natural way because it was cheaper the other way. And detecting fraud in honeys, if I were ever to go back as an activist again in my world, this would be my issue because without beekeepers, and they're just leaving the market in droves because they can't make a living on this now. And it's causing, I've seen, articles that talked about how a beekeeper in Mexico that was making a lot of money on his, honey, because he would export to Canada and to Europe, to England. And all of a sudden he wasn't able to because there was this really cheap honey coming out of all these new countries and selling it much cheaper. And so he had to get a new position, new job of some sort to make, a living. And he was saying, you know, what he did was he would go out into the forests, and his little hives were in the forest somewhere. And now that he's gone from there, who knows what's happening to that forest? He is contributing the loss of beekeepers to the loss of, you know, habitat for bees and for forests and deforestation. So there's, everything is linked. When we're trying to, like, this whole food system that is adulterated with fake honey, fake food, it's making people sick. It's like a broken system. And the idea that, you know, most people don't realize that like 70% of the honey they get in stores is not even really honey. It has been, and it's hard for, we don't even have a honey standard in the United States. We don't have a standard for honey. We don't have anything that clearly defines honey. Although as of 2019, they are working towards that, getting a standard, which would be a big deal, because then we'll be able to say this is not honey that's coming. We can, but the problem with that is the testing is really not reliable either. You know, there's testing ways you can test for high fructose corn syrup, but you can't. The honey fraudsters are finding all different kinds of ways. They're using rice syrups instead of corn syrups, and ways that they can't detect in the type of testing systems that are available now. So it's a very complicated problem, but it's the reason, if we lose the beekeepers, we're going to have, you know, 3 out of 4 crops depend on bees to pollinate. So it's going to, it trickles down. It's all connected. And it's, if without beekeepers, we're not going to have food to eat.
And we had I think people forget, like, yeah, too, you're saying that symbiotic relationship. I remember when I was in college and I took a sustainable food course, and we had a farmer who came in, and they basically have this like no pay deal, because that farm that they're a beekeeper and they sell like a little bit of honey, and then their neighbor is a farmer who does like wheat and flowers and all this stuff. And this one, within a couple years of them living near each other, they realized that that farmer's crop just like boomed. And then this beekeeper's honey actually was like creating all these different flavors because this farmer was constantly changing the crop, so the bees were going over and pollinating. And then this beekeeper got these like really cool combinations of honey because they never knew. And it was like a booming business for both of them.
Right. If they do it right, do it the natural way. And it's really comes down to knowing your beekeeper. And there's also this like myth that, you know, it's, and here it's also another thing we're fighting is the fact that we're not local honey. I mean, we have our local honey, which we love, but there's the myth that like local honey is better for your allergies. But the reason that, I mean, all honey is good for allergies. All honey helps to build the immune system. But the reality is that like, because the type of pollen that is used by bees to make honey, they take back to their hive, that because they really use nectar to make honey, but that goes back to their hives, that honey is not the same, that pollen is not the same pollen that makes people allergic. So the type that they use to take back to the hives is called Entomophilus Honey. It's stickier, it sticks on their little legs and goes before they go into the hives. And the Entomophilus honey is or pollen is the pollen that is, you know, airborne, that you breathe and it causes allergies. So, you know, there's just a lot of educating to do, because everyone would ask us, well, is your honey local? And I'm like, no, it's Greek honey. It's from Greece. But there's all kinds of, you know, it's all about educating. It's just about educating people to help them understand like why it's good. And all honey is good for people. But the most important thing is to know your beekeeper and to know where the source of the honey is coming from, so that you can trust that they are doing natural bee, you know, practices. They're not putting antibiotics in there, you know, to save their bees. They're not, you know, harvesting the honey too soon and just drying it with dehydrators because they just want to hurry up and, you know, and extract right away so they have more honey to sell. And so, you know, we trust Vasily is doing it right. You know, Johnny has seen his operation several times, and he cares about, you know, doing it the right way. And that's what's important to us. So, no, you know, knowing us and we know him, it's like, so I think probably our best way to get this out into the public is probably just to start doing it at farmers markets, which we'll have to explain why it's not local honey.
Well, but also, right, like as you said, like the source of the information is so powerful. So you know the honey maker and trust him. And Annika and I know you and John and trust you, and
Right.
our audience knows us and trusts us as really, environmental activists and therefore arbiters of the truth when it comes to environmental
Stay tuned. We're going to start
So-
a food review podcast.
But I mean, I think all the way around, like we try to start the show off with a fact check. And so I was going to do a fact check, Mary Pat, about organics and how, that organic doesn't necessarily mean pesticide free. And it depends on whether you're using the USDA definition or you're using there's that third party reviewer. Because, the government lets people get away with so much. And whether you're talking about clean water or you're talking about organic foods versus, again, third party reviewers. And so I know for me, when I go think about where to buy my honey, where to buy my fruits and vegetables, I am mindful of who I am buying it from, because I have a lot more confidence in that than I do in the labeling, because the labeling is so incredibly tricky, as you've just explained, and particularly so when it comes to honey. There really isn't a standard, and who you get it from and knowing that they are honest arbiters of the truth is just essentially important if you want to get delicious honey that's going to enrich your body and not poison you.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to know, and it's just so much more helpful to know, where it came from and what it does and what it can do. I mean, like there's all the different types of our honeys. They each have different, characteristics that are good for you, and some that are better than other. The darker honey has higher antioxidants. It's the lighter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's even found in American honeys as well. The darker, like buckwheat honey, is considered like the highest in antioxidants. And because they all have polyphenols. They're all honey, if it's done right, is good for you. They're even it's good for sleeping. I mean, there's the one book that I highly recommend everyone read. If you wanted to read a book on honey, is a book by Dr. Ron Fessenden. And I can send you that link to his work. And he has done so much research on this, and has a lot of sourcing on his research as well. And he talks about how it's a tablespoon of honey at night will help to feed your liver glycogen to help you stay asleep through the night, because sleeping requires a lot of energy. And you if you eat early, you're losing that store of energy, so your body will start looking for glucose, glycogen to feed itself. And if you wake up because you're hungry. And so I started doing that, and I have been. I'm not sure whether it's because I don't work in the legislature anymore, or whether it's because I'm eating honey.
Well, you know what, Annika and I will tell you, because Annika and I both are notorious for sleeping issues and have each tried different ways to deal with it. So
it used to not be a problem, but now definitely I feel like
try
being stuck at home.
Everybody. Oh my gosh.
So Mary Pat, you were talking about, and in a minute, I want to talk a little bit about native plants and bees, even if you're going to buy your honey from Honey the Moon, because that's the best honey and you're going to be assured that it's glyphosate free. But if you want to help and nurture bees, native bees particularly, but bees, really, we need to be talking about native plants as well. But before we do that, you had talked about the different kinds of honey that you have, and the darker and the lighter. And now that you have the multiple flavors, I was wondering if you wouldn't, just because you described so deliciously, right, some of them. So I wonder if you go through each of the different flavors and describe a little bit about it for those who are thinking like, I want to get some of that and I want to try it out, but aren't sure which one to try. Although I would say you have that great gift pack. So you can get a variety pack and you're all set.
Well, honestly, first of all, I think one thing I didn't talk about at all here is that our honey is not normal floral honey. It's called Honeydew Honey. And Honeydew Honey is different than honey made from nectars from flowers, although we do have one floral honey, which is heather. And it crystallizes so quickly. We got that shipped in last August, and it's already starting to crystallize. Whereas I have some pine and some oak and some fir from the last shipment that hasn't even started to crystallize, because honeydew honey has much less water in it. So what honeydew honey is, as opposed to the bee going to a flower, this bee goes to the fir tree or the oak tree or the pine tree, and it seeks out these aphids, these sap sucking aphids on the woody part of the tree. The aphids are sucking the sap out of the tree. It just wants the protein for its metabolism, and it secretes the carbohydrate. The bees then go to the back of the aphids and take that little drop of honeydew. Ants like it too. Lots of other insects like it too, to use it for themselves. And they take that little drop of honeydew, and that's what they take back to the hive to make their honey. So it's been digested by 2 insects, which I could describe that in a really good way, because one, the aphids, it's like, the elimination from the aphid is going into the bees are saying, thank you, this is delicious. and then it goes back, but it's been digested, has so many more enzymes from these different insects. And that's why it's super delicious. And that's why it doesn't crystallize. And that's why it has this really, really like just luxurious feel to it. Like the fir, I would say, if I was to classify it from luxurious to like pedestrian and ready to go, like, just down to earth, good for you, the fir is always my #1 favorite. We don't get that every year. We didn't get any this year. It was really sad, because it's always my favorite. It's just delicious. It's kind of the lightest in color, but it's definitely not lightest in flavor. Here, this is I should have had some open so that you could see how beautiful it is. But here, this is chestnut. And chestnut, this is like this is 3 years old, this bottle that I have here. It's like still not crystallized. Chestnut is interesting because it's a combination of honeydew and floral, because the chestnut trees, we have no chestnut trees that give us honey in America. In Greece, they have the flowering, and they also have the sap suckers on there. So this is both floral and honeydew honey. And then the fir is just a delicious, the flavoring, the texture on the tongue, just so wonderful. It's lighter, caramely, vanilla flavored. And then the oak, we call it the boss. It's the darkest. It's super dark, and it has the most antioxidants. In fact, there was a study done at the University of Thessaloniki that has this as the highest amount. I usually make this when I make my elderberry syrups. I always put oak in it because it's the heavy hitter with the antioxidants. The pine, and another interesting thing, and this would help with the whole food fraud issue and education issue, is that pine, like the pine that we got this year, tastes different than the pine we got last year. I didn't like the pine we got last year, but I love the pine we got this year. They just it's like the terroir of wine. He took it to a different forest because, the forests over there were all burned down during the fires in Greece. So he had to take a different spot. So, and then the heather it's an unusual flavor. You'd think it'd be really sweet because it's floral, but it's not that sweet. It's a really kind of neutral flavor, and it's a really interesting, it's extra good on ice cream, BT dubs. Vim.
Well, I have to talk to you about getting the crystallizing jars, because Dave loves crystallized honey. And so he, and I guess I didn't realize that was why the one was a different texture than the other. And so he takes it and he, spreads it on his bread and loves it. And so the fact that that's really, I guess I always just was waiting for them all to crystallize over time, but that won't happen.
Eventually they will.
Eventually. Well, I don't think we never have them around long enough, except that one jar was that when we got the variety pack. And so I'm going to have to talk to you about getting
heathers,
the heathers, because that's really Dave's favorite. That's like his treat sometimes at night. Vim does it on ice cream. Dave does it on bread, on good bread.
Right. I do it straight with the spoon. It's so good. And I have bought other people's honey. And usually every time I buy another Greek honey, it's always crystallized, because they ship it over in jars. They probably have it shipped over in jars, which means it comes over on a boat. It's cold and frozen, so it is going to be crystallized unless they.
So how do you ship yours over?
We ship ours over in these 50 kilo. Again, numbers. don't ask me. And these
Really large.
they're about this big. They're about this big, and Greek tins, and then we found a bottler up in Bethel, PA, which is in like northern Lancaster County, and he bought an ancient apiary, and he is a beekeeper, and he does bottling for local beekeepers. And so he has this room that is like a certain degrees, like he keeps, so if you heat your honey higher than 110 degrees, it kills the enzymes. So you can't heat. So he puts these things into like these steam baths that are no higher than 75 to 85 degrees, or they can go up to 100 degrees without hurting the enzymes, because the hive, the temperature of the hive is 105, 110, at the hottest. So the enzymes are still, viable at that point. But you can fact check that. And so it takes him 3 or 4 weeks just to get that honey back to like its original state. And but you couldn't do that if I put this in a steam room for 2 or 3 weeks, the label would get all weird. So so I'm guessing that's why the ones I've purchased that were Greek honey came to me were all crystallized. But, so it's the more you know about something, the more complicated it becomes. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I decided to take Vasily and say, okay, let's do it. And really didn't know what I was getting into, but it's opened up a world of mystery. And again,
do you enjoy it?
I don't like the business aspect of it very much. I would like to, I like eating it, and I like talking about it, and but I love that we are caring for a product and trying to like introduce a product like this to the world, because it has so many health benefits. It's so good for us, and it's so delightful and sweet
and good for the earth, right? You're encouraging, you're supporting a business that nurtures the earth rather than supporting one that is harmful.
And exactly. So I just believe smaller economies are better. So even if we don't, like it's not, I don't want to go. And a distributor wanted to distribute us from the beginning. And we almost did that because that would be great. And then we could get more honey, and he even told us that, I said, if we went to a Whole Foods, we'd be out of our honey in 2 minutes. One shipment, we'd be out of our honey. So we didn't want to do big, because then, it would be gone. And then we'd be encouraging all the bad things that make people like try to get more honey, like harvesting early before it's ready to harvest, and feeding the bees sugar to make them produce more. That's why smaller is better. And so I just wouldn't want to grow in that kind of fashion. I just want to make sure that we're growing at a really natural pace. And then when we decided not to go with the distributor, even though he said he would go to smaller stores and just, take it, slowly, like we wanted to grow slowly, the pandemic happened. And this kind of product in a store would really require a lot of in-person sampling, because, you would have to say, why would I pay $22 for this jar of honey? Like, taste it, you'll know why. And then I could tell you more about it, but there's so much, it's just a wonderful product. And I am very excited about, that it's a part of our lives. And I said, even if we are failures at this business, we will always have wonderful gifts to give people for the rest of our lives. So yeah, I do love it, and I don't want to give it up yet. I just have to, maybe I should talk to a few more business people to get some insight as to how I should. And and social media is not my thing, as you well know. So I don't really want to be on there promoting my product, and that's really what needs to happen.
Do you still have your own bees?
We do. We have, but we lost our last hive. And so the question we're having,
what happened?
They die. They just die. Lots of reasons. This one died at the end of the summer, and we've never lost our hives at the end of summer. And normally in the spring, we just buy new bees. We go get packages of bees and just have our hive. Mm-hmm. But now that John is working, he's very busy. He's working on a couple projects, and he's very busy, and he doesn't have as much time, and it's not fair to have bees if you can't take care of them. So I think we're considering not doing hives. We have a couple months to talk it through, but I'm thinking we might not do it this year, especially if we, if we ever want to move out of this town, out of this this crazy town in King of Prussia. I'm thinking about doing that. So I don't know. We're still talking about that. But I, our honey, we only have a small amount of our honey left. And oh my gosh, I love our honey. So I use it in my muffins. I use my own honey on my muffins in the morning, and I use this at night. It's my dessert. So,
it is so superb and it is so delicious, and our whole family loves it.
I'm so thrilled.
And my whole staff does it. Delaware Riverkeeper Network and Green Amendments for the Generations.
Oh my God.
It really is their favorite gift that I've ever given.
So grateful. Thank you so much. But now I just want to know what happened in New Mexico really quick, if you don't mind telling us. Is this
okay?
I love to go off topic really quick?
No, you can do that. So
you.
Great. So as everybody listening on the show knows, right? Our Green Amendments movement is humming along beautifully, and we have a Green Amendment proposal in the state of New Mexico. And so I was just over there for a month plus, and before that, Annika was over there for a semester of school. And we have these two amazing women that are our lead champions on the Green Amendment, Representative Joanne Ferrari and Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. And just they're plugging away. We have 25 sponsors signed on in support of the New Mexico Green Amendment. In fact, while we were there, one of the legislators, Representative Matthew McQueen, who initially voted in a way that was really against us, it was to table the bill. He then worked with us on language, and then not only became an advocate for it, but actually signed on as a sponsor.
Oh, awesome.
So we got through the first committee, the House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee. Initially, the language was tabled, we reworked it, and then it was passed overwhelmingly by a strong majority vote. And I think it was 6-4. Is that what it was, Annika? And the people the way they're doing these meetings, they're doing them by Zoom. And in the first meeting where it got tabled, 79% of the people who got on to the hearing platform said that they were voting on that platform in support of the Green Amendment. That's why they were there, and they were supporting and vote. The second time this committee heard it, it was 84% of the people were there to testify for the Green Amendment. Voting against us was the New Mexico Oil and Gas folks. And who else, Annika? You did that great name. Who else
Koch
voted
brothers.
against us?
Koch
Say it
brothers.
again.
The Koch brothers, who actually didn't have a real argument. Like, they're lobbyists for Americans for Progress. And I'm like, okay, so this man didn't even write, like, you had a minute. Yeah, it's not a lot of time, but you come up with a couple of points. Like, you could try to at least lie. And he didn't. He literally was like, we ask you to vote no, and for all the reasons stated previously, we ask you to vote no on the Green Amendment. So I'm like, bro, you didn't even try. 22 seconds. I timed him. 22 seconds to not say a single fact. So, whatever.
So after that, we then went on to the House Judiciary Committee, where again, the votes should have been with us. And as soon as the hearing started, now, one of the things, we want to make very clear that the movement in each state is coming from the people of that state. So I'm there, I'm working with them, educating them, Annika, the rest of the Green Amendments for the Generations team we're doing our thing. But we wanted to make sure that during the hearing process, when legislators can have quote unquote experts, that they were people from New Mexico. And right out of the box, the two of the leading Dems in the state, including the Speaker of the House, Speaker Egolf, wham, just went at our experts, and it was one of those asking questions that were difficult to answer and then cutting them off when they weren't, getting the answer they wanted in the way they wanted. And when there was a suggestion that, well, how about this expert speak to it? Well, no, and it was just like really so aggressive and so hostile, sort of threw some of the people off their game, which happens when you're not at a hearing where people are genuinely trying to get good information. All of that said, and then what happened, and I'm sure that this was staged, planned in advance by the opposition, right? Who get a lot of oil and gas money on both sides of the political spectrum. There was a motion to table. Now in New Mexico, it's an all volunteer legislature. They don't get any money. They only get some staff assistance during the legislative session. In even years, the legislative session is only 30 days long.
Wow.
And, so these people are working really hard, literally for no money with very little support.
Yeah.
And in a state where oil and gas, reigns supreme, and they throw around the money to a lot of people. Now, our legislative champions are not amongst those people that choose to accept that kind of support. But, the others do. And so there was a motion to table, and the vote was 9-3 to table. And what I said to the press and what, I say to the world is, that was the cowardly out for those who wanted to vote against the Green Amendment. They wanted to vote against the right of the people to clean water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments, but they didn't have the courage of their convictions, right? Because they didn't think it would politically serve them, or perhaps they were rightfully so embarrassed by the fact that they would cast that kind of vote. But if you're voting to table, you're not voting against it. So it was a vote of 9-3.
Yeah.
And what was it? Representative Chasey, Representative McQueen, the gentleman I told you about earlier, and Representative Armstrong voted with us for the Green Amendment. The Speaker of the House, Brian Egolf,
who hosted a whole climate summit in the fall about why we had to protect New Mexico and why we had to battle against climate change and all this good climate environmental stuff. Had a whole summit about it.
Yeah.
Voted to table it.
And was like really the lead attacker, the lead aggressor against it. So with such a short session, that vote happened at the end of the session. There was less than a week left. And so it was pretty much, you couldn't make it at that point. So but our legislative champions, Representative Ferrari and Senator Cedillo Lopez and others, they're already, afterwards, we're going to do it again in 2023. We've got some really great ideas for how we're going to take on the challengers, because Brian Egolf talked about it, having a commission and a this and a that. So sure, we're going to work to put together a task force and have hearings and things and really, build on the tremendous success we've made over the last 2 years. So it was very disappointing. On the other hand, we also had some really great successes. And you know what? We had successes despite the fact that the very powerful fossil fuel industry clearly, and the Koch brothers, have us in their line of sights. And yet we're still stronger than them, because more people showed up to say, I want the New Mexico Green Amendment every single time they had a chance. So yeah.
And a boo-boo to you.
Well, that's the bummer. So, and then the fracking. So I'm see, this is why I'm not a good business person, because now I wanted to ask you more about like the DRBC and the
that we will do another show on that.
Yeah,
on the fracking ban in the watershed. And also, just to let you know, though, our green amendments are going swimmingly or progressing in Hawaii, in Maine, in New Jersey, in Delaware. And then, of course, we have 8 other states where it's all in various stages. But those particularly have a lot of really positive energy. And then, of course, we just passed one in New York in November. So, the amendment is, the movement's growing. And, we knew it was going to be a heavy lift with oil and gas having so much power in the state of New Mexico. And yet I still feel like we're coming out as champions. And I believe that we'll get it next year.
Good for you. Oh my God. I don't know how you keep going at it, Maya, honestly. So wonderful.
Well, because I've got great partners. Like I've got Annika, who is very active in the Green Amendment movement. And then Bridget and Molly and Cameron back on the team. So, and now Mel, who's been at it. So we're really, thank you for asking and thank you for caring, because as you know, I truly, truly, truly believe in the power of this pathway.
Yeah. So. Oh, so wonderful. Well, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my wonderful honey. It's like, if I were to rate them for your friends that want to know what my favorites are from the beginning. So I would start with right now, I'm a chestnut fan. Chestnut and fir are my top 2. And then I go to the oak the pine, and I love the pine. I mean, the pine is now coming. It's making a new comeback. It's like wine almost. They have different properties that make me like them at different times with different things. They're great with all different kinds of like foods and cheeses and but I mostly just eat it straight, and I can't.
And if people want it, let's remind them, how do they get your honey?
Simply, you just go to honeythemoon.com and go to the shop tab. But first, read all the other fun information on there. Go to the shop tab, and it's really super, super easy to order. And also, we were for a time doing buy one, get one oaks, because as novice entrepreneurs that were not very good at what we were doing, we were going to go with the distributor. We quickly decided we had to label all of our honeys, and we put a best by date, which honey has no best by date. It doesn't expire. It's, of course, we found it in the tombs. I wouldn't want to eat that necessarily. In the tomb, but it really doesn't. It never goes bad because there's so little water. There's very little water. It can't go bad. And so we were doing the buy one get one because we had labels on there that said expired in 2022, and so we had to, they're still good. They still haven't crystallized, the oak, because it's just such a beautiful, luxurious, this is one of them. This is from 2021. It's still completely liquid. So,
well, there you have it.
Buy one get one of the oaks. We'll honor that for your listeners.
Oh, there we go.
Well, maybe how are they going to say that there are listeners?
Maybe we'll do it.
Green jeans.
Just say. We'll honor it for anybody. Just it's Bo. I think it's BOGOAK 21.
There you go. Use code BOGOK.
AK. No.
AK.
BOGOAK 21.
BOGOAK. BOGOAK 21.
Oh, I get it. Okay. It's like, what? Okay.
So
this part
honeythemoon.com, BOGOAK 21.
21.
And
yeah. And you can get buy one oak, get one free.
And then I would say, and buy 2 other flavors in addition to try it out, because it is really spectacular.
It's amazing. It truly is.
All right.
This chance to be a real entrepreneur.
We're happy to have you.
So, Annika, how about you now? Should I get you an order of honey and send it to you at law school?
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually don't have a supply of MP's honey with me, and now I'm like craving it. And I've been looking for like a better substitute for my ice cream and super manufactured caramel sauce. So that would probably be good.
So I tell you what, I'm going to go online. I'm going to order some of the heather for Dave, because he likes that crystallized honey. And I'll get some extra jars. I have to get some more anyway for myself and do the staff order. And I'll get some extra jars for you to take back when you come home for a visit.
I was going to say another fun fact about honey. Maybe don't use MP's honey for this, but it's good for diabetic foot ulcer treatment and burns as a topical treatment.
Oh my.
But maybe don't use the nice,
don't use the delicious, luxurious honey for that. But really fantastic show. I'm so glad we had Mary Pat on, because I think it really is so important, right? Like we really need businesses that are supporting the environment while they're supporting people and their families with their, creating good jobs and livelihoods. So, glyphosate-free honey from Greece, really a powerful way to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And with so many flavor choices, oh my gosh, guys, you could try so many different combinations. So definitely go to honeythemoon.com. We will leave the description for the website, the link, and that discount code that MP left for you to go get buy one, get one free oak or half off oak, whatever it was. So I think with that, we are going to close out this episode. As always, we are just 2 people trying to spread the word, working for 2 amazing nonprofits, one being Green Amendments for the Generations, which you can go support at www.forthegenerations.org. Get the book, sign a petition, make a donation of any amount, whatever floats your boat. Nonprofits thrive off the help of people like you, everyday people. And like we always say in this episode, every little bit counts. So if you can't join us on the picket line, join us in the Webiverse and, do that stuff. And the other nonprofit, Mom, now you can go.
You can also support the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. If you live in the Delaware River watershed, or you want to support an organization at the forefront of the anti-fracking, anti-fossil fuel, pro-clean energy battles, as well as those fighting for species of all kinds, Atlantic sturgeon, horseshoe crabs, native plants, and taking on dredging, dams, developments, and all kinds of projects that are really harming people and harm the earth in the Delaware River watershed, www.delawareriverkeeper.org. We are the organization that's always out on the spear tip, out on the point with our advocacy, with our litigation, doing what's right, no matter how hard it is.
Well, there you have it, people. And I would also like to note, you can become a member of either organization at no additional cost, because everybody should be able to stay up to date and fight for their environment without paying a fee. And it's weird that people have you pay fees, but we don't. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit that little subscribe, follow button wherever you're listening to this. And join us next time for another exciting episode of Green Jeans. Until next time.
Until next time.